It all started so innocently. I was aimlessly browsing Facebook one weekday night when a familiar name popped up in my People You May Know feed. Heather, my first love from high school. We had drifted apart after graduation nearly 20 years ago, but I still had fond memories of our time together. On a whim, I clicked on her profile photo, a rush of nostalgia washing over me as I slowly scrolled through old pictures of her smiling brightly, her face still as youthful and beautiful as I remembered. She was my first real girlfriend, my date to junior prom, the girl I had planned to go to college with before life pulled us in separate directions. Seeing her again sparked an old flame inside me, and I couldn't resist sending her a friend request. To my surprise, Heather quickly accepted and sent me a message saying how great it was to hear from me again after all these years. We exchanged memories and inside jokes, reminiscing about sneaking kisses between classes and stargazing on the hood of my car the night of prom. She confessed that she had saved the rose corsage I gave her, pressed between the pages of her high school yearbook all this time. I was flooded with emotions I hadn't felt in decades, transported back to the butterflies she gave me as a teenage boy falling in love for the first time. Over the next few weeks, Heather and I messaged back and forth every day, the conversation growing more familiar and intimate. She asked about my job, my family, and I told her all about my life now, married with 2 kids. In turn, she shared that she had never married but had traveled the world, living an adventurous life I envied. Late one night, after a glass of wine, I worked up the courage to tell her that even after all these years apart, I had never forgotten our magical first prom night together under the stars. She responded that she had never felt as safe and loved with anyone else as she did in my arms that night. Caught up in nostalgia and longing, I made an impulsive decision. I took a selfie and sent it to her, saying I wished we could be together again, if only for one more night. To my surprise, she reciprocated by sending a sensual photo of herself, reigniting the thrilling passion we once shared. In the heat of the moment, our digital relationship escalated over the next few days with even more revealing photos and fantasies. It was dangerous and reckless, but I couldn't resist reconnecting with the first girl I had ever loved. That's when the tone suddenly shifted. One morning, I received a chilling message from an unknown account. The sender claimed to have access to our entire private conversation, including the intimate photos exchanged in a moment of weakness. If I didn't pay them $5,000, they threatened to anonymously send the incriminating pictures to everyone on my Facebook friends list, including family members and professional contacts. I was horrified, realizing this person could destroy my marriage, reputation, and career with the click of a button. I immediately messaged them back, pleading with them not to expose me, desperate to keep my lapse in judgment private. But they were stubbornly adamant about the money, ignoring my pleas. Each time I protested or stalled payment, they would increase their demand, soon escalating to $10,000 then. $20,000, an impossible sum. I agonized over what to do, sick to my stomach with fear and guilt. I couldn't afford to pay some anonymous extortionist that much. But I also couldn't bear the thought of intimate images I had shared privately being spread far and wide. It was only then that I realized the awful truth. Heather's account must have been hacked. Someone was masquerading as her the whole time in order to manipulate me into sharing compromising photos they could use for blackmail. The idea of some creep lurking in our private conversations, watching our digital intimacy escalate for weeks, turned my stomach. I felt violated and betrayed, our treasured secret memories corrupted. I had no idea how to make them stop, or if I even could. Going to the police posed the risk of accelerating the release of the photos if the blackmailer panicked. I thought about giving in and paying to end the nightmare, but knew they would likely just demand more money in perpetuity. Whatever choice I made, this sinister figure had me trapped through my own foolish lapse in judgment. In the end, I knew I had to take back some control. I came clean to my wife about reconnecting online with an old flame from high school and how our innocent flirtation had gone too far in a moment of weakness. It was the most painful confession of my life, but she deserved to know the truth. I warned Heather that her account had likely been compromised. Then I immediately changed all passwords, removed contact info from my profiles, and scrubbed my online presence to limit what the hacker could access. Finally, I posted a notice on my page alerting friends that someone was impersonating people to spread false information and to be wary of any dubious messages. Shutting everything down seemed to cut off the blackmailer's power by denying them access or leverage. But I still live with lingering unease, wondering if our private photos are out there somewhere, waiting to emerge. I acted recklessly, allowing nostalgia to cloud my judgment, and put myself in a terrible position. But the harsh lesson is that we can never know who might be watching what we share online or how they could use it against us. I'm just grateful I realized it was a scam before things got worse. What began as an exciting secret romance nearly cost me everything. It was a sunny Saturday morning when I logged into my Facebook account like I do every day. Scrolling through my news feed, I noticed a post in the hiking group I had recently joined from a woman named Jen who was new to the area. In her post, Jen explained that she had just moved to the city a few weeks prior for a new job. She said she didn't know many people yet and was hoping to find someone local to go hiking with and show her some good trails. Having joined the hiking group because I wanted to meet fellow outdoor enthusiasts, I felt bad for Jen and could relate to being new in town and not knowing anyone. I had been wanting to check out some new trails outside the city myself, so I commented on her post that I would be happy to join her for a hike sometime. Jen replied thanking me for reaching out, and we exchanged a few messages within the group over the next couple days to get to know each other a bit. She seemed nice in our messages, and I didn't think much of it as I suggested meeting that Saturday afternoon at a trailhead I was familiar with about 30 minutes outside the city. Looking back now, I see that I was too quick to trust someone I had never met before or even spoken to on the phone. But at the time, I didn't think it was terribly risky to meet up for a hike on a Saturday afternoon at a public trail. That Saturday morning, I ate a quick breakfast and packed my hiking gear, feeling excited to hit the trail and meet my new hiking buddy. I made sure to leave early enough to drive the 30 minutes out of town to the trailhead and arrive a little before we had agreed to meet at noon. As I pulled into the small gravel parking lot at the top of the trail, I didn't see any other cars yet. I got out and stretched my legs, breathing in the fresh air and appreciating the calm quiet of nature. After about 15 minutes of waiting around and checking Facebook for messages, I started wondering if Jen was even going to show up. Just as I was about to give up and head home, disappointed, I heard a car rumbling up the gravel road. An older model SUV pulled into the otherwise empty lot and parked next to me. My first thought was that it must be Jen finally arriving. I waved and smiled as a man and woman, looking to be in their 40 seconds, got out of the SUV and started slowly walking toward me. "Hi, Jen. It's so nice to finally meet you," I called out cheerfully. But as they got closer, I noticed the confused expressions on their faces. My heart sank as I realized this was definitely not the person I had been messaging with at all. "Can we help you?" the woman asked warily as they approached. I felt my face flush red with embarrassment as I tried to explain the situation. "I'm so sorry. I'm actually waiting for someone named Jen that I was supposed to meet here. I must have the wrong trailhead location." The man and woman glanced at each other with raised eyebrows as I awkwardly turned to leave. Just then, the man suddenly demanded my wallet and keys in a gruff, angry tone. Shocked, I simply stared back blankly as my brain tried to process this sudden turn of events. It wasn't until he angrily pulled out a gun from his jacket and yelled again to hand over my stuff that I snapped out of it. Fear coursed through me as I realized I had been lured into a trap. This man and woman were criminals who had created a fake Facebook profile to target victims. With shaky hands and my heart pounding, I quickly gave them my wallet and keys, praying they would just take the money and leave me unharmed. The man rifled through my wallet, pocketing the $60 in cash I had before tossing the empty wallet in the dirt. To my immense relief, after getting what they came for, the man simply told me to turn around and start walking slowly away. I did exactly as he ordered, not daring to look back until I heard their SUV speed away down the gravel road just moments later. I was left standing alone next to my car, hands still shaking from fear and disbelief at what had just happened. After taking a minute to catch my breath and try to calm my racing heart, I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called to report the crime. The police arrived in about 15 minutes and I recounted the entire traumatic experience to them. They were kind and sympathetic, but also informed me these types of Facebook extortion scams were on the rise lately. The criminals find random photos of attractive strangers online, create fake profiles, and then try to lure unsuspecting victims to isolated places where they can be easily robbed, with little risk of getting caught. As much as I wanted justice, the police made it clear the chances of tracking down the perpetrators were slim with the limited information I could provide. After taking my statement and making sure I was unharmed, they helped me cancel my stolen cards and file a police report. I decided once I got home to post a warning in the hiking group I had met Jen in, explaining the scam and my frightening encounter. I wanted to make sure to prevent the criminals from targeting anyone else in the group. Many members were shocked this could happen through our friendly community group and thanked me profusely for sharing my experience. While it was comforting to feel that support after such a violating incident, I was also angry with myself for letting my guard down so foolishly online. I had put too much faith in a stranger just because we were part of the same Facebook group and paid a scary price for my lapse in judgment. I vowed to be much more cautious moving forward about who I interacted with on social media. This frightening experience definitely left me wary of accepting friend requests or making plans to meet up with people I didn't already know well offline. At first, I stopped using Facebook groups entirely, feeling paranoid about all the strangers lurking online. But I realized that letting fear isolate me completely would just be letting those criminals win. I wanted to find a balance between being cautious but not so paranoid that I stopped connecting with new people. After taking a break to recover and process what happened, I gradually re-engaged with Facebook in a more careful way. I avoid sharing specific locations or making firm plans with people I don't really know now. And I am much more selective about who I choose to interact with, and make sure to really get to know them first through extended online communication before meeting up in person. While it was certainly a difficult lesson, I'm ultimately glad to have learned from this experience how to better protect myself online. I'll never again see the internet as an entirely safe or benign place after what happened. But with proper precautions, I do think social media platforms like Facebook can still help facilitate meaningful connections. I wasn't going to let one scary incident, as traumatic as it was, completely stop me from pursuing my interests or meeting new people. This encounter taught me to navigate online interactions in a more thoughtful and cautious manner, rather than retreat from them entirely out of fear. Moving forward, I aim to be wiser rather than more withdrawn because of it. It started out as just another ordinary day. I was sitting at home in my pajamas on a lazy Saturday morning, coffee in hand, scrolling through my Facebook feed. I tend to use Facebook practically every day to keep up with friends and family, so it's a regular part of my routine. As I was aimlessly browsing posts, a message popped up in my inbox from my friend Jenny. We had been close since college and kept in touch mostly online since she moved across the country last year. At first glance, the message seemed totally normal. She was just making small talk, asking me how my week had been and what I was up to that day. I typed back a cheerful reply telling her about my plans for a quiet weekend of Netflix and catching up on chores. I casually asked how her new job was going and how life was in her new home. Her reply set off some alarm bells in my head immediately. She said she had been mugged during a weekend trip to New York City and that all her cash, credit cards, and ID had been stolen. She was stranded at the airport and desperate, asking if I could wire her money for an emergency plane ticket home. Now, Jenny and I had been friends for years and were prone to helping each other out, but she had never asked me for money outright like this. I was instantly concerned for her safety and wanted to help, but something about this seemed strange and off. We hadn't talked in a few weeks, so her abruptly asking for money out of the blue didn't sit right with me. I had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to give Jenny a call so I could hear her voice and get more details about exactly when and where she was mugged. But when I called, the number immediately went to a generic voicemail recording that didn't even have her name. At that moment, I realized this absolutely was not my friend Jenny messaging me. My stomach dropped and my heart started racing as I frantically logged back into Facebook. I sent another message bluntly asking for specifics about the mugging and when she had flown to New York. The reply confirmed my worst fears. Whoever was messaging me posing as Jenny clearly had no real details and was avoiding my pointed questions. They became increasingly pushy about the money, telling me they were in a dangerous situation and needed cash wired immediately. I was shaken to my core, realizing my closest friend's account had likely been hacked by some stranger. I reported the fraudulent messages to Facebook right away in hopes they could regain control of her account, but I knew chances were slim. I tried calling and texting Jenny's real cell number multiple times, but got absolutely no response. Whoever had access to her Facebook also seemed to have control of her phone. I feared they had hacked all her accounts and were locking her out. Over the next few anxious days, I continued trying desperately to get in touch with the real Jenny, but her Facebook remained in the hands of some unknown hacker. They kept messaging me from her profile with various stories, trying every manipulation tactic to get me to send money. I was sick with worry about Jenny, feeling completely helpless that I couldn't contact my friend. I could hardly eat or sleep thinking about what might have happened to her. Nearly a week went by before I finally heard from the actual Jenny on her cell phone. She had been totally unaware that any of this was happening since she didn't have international cell service overseas. She was still on the same European vacation I knew she had been planning for months and hadn't accessed Facebook since before leaving. I was overjoyed to hear her voice and know she was okay, but also felt renewed alarm at the extent of the hack. This elaborate catfishing scheme meant a stranger had her passport, travel plans, and so much other personal information. In the months following this traumatic ordeal, the horror only grew. The hacker clearly had accessed a trove of Jenny's private data from her Facebook activity and messages. They were able to provide enough convincing personal details to her bank over the phone that they posed convincingly as Jenny. We tried to alert the bank that she was overseas and fraudulent activity was happening, but it was too late. By the time Jenny landed back in the US, the hacker had already drained her savings and checking accounts. The nightmare didn't stop there either. The hacker was somehow able to open up credit cards in Jenny's name and use her compromised information to take out high-interest payday loans. By the time Jenny untangled the intricate web of financial fraud, they had ruined her credit score and finances. She struggled for years to recover from the identity theft and predatory loans. The money was almost less upsetting than the total loss of security and privacy. I still shudder remembering that deceptive, innocent-seeming Facebook message that ended up almost destroying my best friend's life. She lost everything just because I obliviously engaged with what seemed to be a typical post. It taught me that you truly never know who might be lurking behind a familiar profile picture online. I learned to be much more vigilant about verifying identities and accounts before interacting on social media. This traumatic experience showed me that scammers and hackers are always finding new sophisticated ways to exploit platforms like Facebook. Something as routine as an online message from a friend can actually be a phishing attempt from a criminal half a world away looking for money or data. I never want to fall blindly into that kind of trap again. Now I'm extremely cautious about what personal details I share online and what kinds of requests for help I respond to. I deeply regret that I didn't know then what I know now about online safety. It could have spared my closest friend years of financial ruin and emotional agony. She lost far more than just money. She lost her fundamental sense of security, all from one misleading message that seemed totally harmless. I hope my warning story can help others avoid the same fate and take social media interactions more seriously. Don't end up the victim of a life-shattering phishing scheme like we did.